Hello, my name is Wakila Perry, and the TED Ed presentation that I will be doing today is entitled Self-Advocacy. Below the title, you will see a quote that I found to be very fitting for this TED Ed, and it states, "Students who can identify their own strengths and weaknesses, as well as how to communicate their needs, can increase their chances of success." Think about that. How many of your students in your class can identify their strengths, their weaknesses, and even communicate them to you? Even though they may know them, are they able to put into words those strengths? Are they able to put in words those weaknesses? That's something we should all think about. The goals of this TED Ed is to learn how self-advocacy can assist students academically and beyond, to learn and discuss classroom strategies for promoting students' self-advocacy skill development. Take a moment to think, what does self-advocacy mean to you? Now that you've had a moment to think, I will give you the definition of self-advocacy that I was able to put together through different research. It says the ability to effectively communicate, convey, negotiate, or assert his or her own interests, desires, needs, and rights. It involves making informed decisions and taking responsibility for those decisions. Does your definition of self-advocacy align to this one? Why discuss self-advocacy? Self-advocacy is showing that the child can communicate her needs to the teachers or others. It assists the child in understanding their needs, and the child becomes aware of what help or support is needed to address those needs. FYI, when doing this research, it was extremely hard to find different forms of graphs and just different things to show that self-advocacy is really working in students. Little research has been gathered on the effectiveness of self-advocacy training programs, but there has been an increased number of students who have been more involved in preparing their individual education plans. The student's ability to self-advocate might be correlated to personality, characteristics, support from family and school, and the specific disability. Professionals working with students who have an acquired brain injury have noted that sometimes these students are unable to independently self-advocate because of the complexity of the issues. A test by Weimer, Schwartz, Browder, and others have claimed that self-determination skills have benefited students in the long term. Weimer and Schwartz found individuals who scored higher on a measure of self-determination than their peers had more positive adult outcomes, such as higher rate of employment and higher wages 1 year after graduation. That's something to think about. The four basic areas of self-advocacy are knowledge to self, communication, awareness of others, and educational involvement. Below each of these four areas, you will also see smaller areas that are included in those areas as well. Seven steps to self-advocacy. 1, you should recognize that academic success or failure is your responsibility. So when explaining to your students how they can self-advocate for themselves, ensure that you let them know that their success academically is all up to them and they are fully responsible. Number 2, understand your abilities and areas of need and learn ways to compensate. Learn how to explain yourself to others. To meet the needs of step 2, you should help your students identify their strengths as well as their weaknesses and take those weaknesses so that they are able to apply them in the areas that are needed to benefit their learning. And in doing this, they'll also be able to learn how to explain those strengths and weaknesses in areas of learning to others. Number 3, develop good communication skills to request assistance and services. Teach your students how to communicate with others effectively so that they are able to explain to them what they need and they are able to receive the proper services. Number 4, know when you need help and ask for it. I know that there are tons of students who sometimes need help, but they just don't ask for help, mostly because they simply don't know how. Be sure to explain to students that it's okay to need help and that you are going to make sure that they know how to express themselves when the help is needed so that they're able to get that help and they're just not sitting there letting those weaknesses get worse and worse. Number 5, be honest with yourself. Know and understand your strengths and areas where improvement is needed. Just as I've stated before, make sure those students know those strengths and know those weaknesses. Go over it with them from time to time because we all know that sometimes your strengths change, sometimes your weaknesses change. So make sure that they are encouraged and they know where they need those improvements. So when it's time for them to be able to express what's needed, they are able to do it. Number 6, develop and use mature social skills. Just because a student may know what they may need help in and what areas they excel in does not mean that they know how to properly communicate those things. As you can tell in these 7 steps, communication, communication, communication. As long as your child or your students are prepared properly and are taught how to effectively communicate, they will be able to meet all of the steps that we have talked about in these 7 steps to advocacy. Just make sure that their social skills are for their age so that they are able to understand and explain it to others so that others are able to understand what they're explaining to them. And lastly, be organized. It's nothing worse than a student who knows their strengths, knows their weaknesses, knows how to communicate, but when it's time to show these documents to people or express things, they're not organized. That means organization in their thoughts, organization in their paperwork. Just be organized, organized, organized. One area that self-advocacy could be used is in understanding your IEP. So in understanding their IEP, they are able to self-advocate for themselves. Do your students who have an IEP understand what an IEP is, and are they even aware that they have an IEP? Well, what is an IEP? When explaining to your students what an IEP is, be sure that you break down what the acronym IEP stands for. Individualized Education Program. And here I've given you an example of how to even break it down to themselves. Individualized, one person, me, education, my learning, program, the program that I am in, the IEP program. Let them know that it is a roadmap that helps them reach their goals. Let them know that that program is all about them and that all the paperwork is all about them and the uniqueness of themselves. Make sure that they know that they are a part of their IEP process and that they have a voice to explain to others what their needs are. They should also understand the different parts of an IEP. Here I have given you the different parts of an IEP. I have taken it from the elementary level all the way to the level of graduation and the transition and the different types of diplomas, their post-secondary goals, the services, their annual goals, accommodations, and their present level of performances. When students are able to understand their strengths and their weaknesses and their ability to tell about themselves and what's needed for them to be successful, and they understand that their list of strengths, weaknesses, and needs can change from time to time, and that they have a voice in the goals that will be set for them from year to year and the services that they receive, and that you care about their lives even outside of the classroom and after they graduate, they'll begin to understand that, hey, this is really about me. This program is really for me, and as long as I can do all of these things, I'm able to show the world that I can tell people what I need, what things I'm good at, what things I need to work on, and I even have a plan for after I finish school. Here is an example of an student IEP overview completion. So we know that the goal here in working with a student to self-advocate for an IEP is for them to be able to enter into a meeting and be able to express themselves in a meeting with all parties involved. Through this IEP interview completion, the student is able to show that they know about their strengths, they are able to tell about their style of learning, they are able to tell you what self-advocacy is and how they feel they are doing with self-advocacy. They're able to talk about their goals. They're able to talk about their accommodations, and even able to look ahead to the years to come. So as I stated, this is just an example, but ensure that you have some type of document that you can go over with your students prior to going into an IEP meeting to make sure that their self-advocacy skills are up to par and that they're able to express themselves in a way that everyone is able to understand them. Here you have a student agenda. In every meeting, we know that there is an agenda involved, but you don't want to go into the meeting and give the student an agenda that they have no idea what it's talking about. So prior to the meeting, give them an agenda, let them know the different parts. You can highlight where they'll be able to talk and their interaction, something that's a guideline so they can not only be aware of what's going on, but they're able to follow along during the meeting as well. And again, this is just an example. Student agendas vary. It varies based on the student and the group of people that involve. Your school may have their own type of an agenda. You may have your own agenda for your classroom. You may make a certain type of agenda for your student. But just ensure that this agenda makes them feel involved and just as important as everyone else in the room. The next place that students are able to show self-advocacy skills are in the classroom. Are your students given the opportunity to advocate for themselves during parent-teacher conferences? Why or why not? Prior to having that conference with those students, you should make sure that you have a mock case conference. I know that in the classroom, you are teaching those students, they're seeing their grades, they're seeing the things that they're doing well on, so they know their strengths, they know the areas that they need to improve on, but they may not know how to go into a conference and conduct themselves. So prior to, you might hold mock conferences in your class. During this conference model, the student will actually be involved in a conference and know exactly what a conference looks like. It's like a rehearsal. It lets them know what to expect and how to express themselves to you as well as their parents when the big day comes. You may have an assistant in your classroom, or you may have staff members that are available during this time that you can bring in to put into those mock conferences so that they can act as teachers and parents as well. Remember, students who lead their own conferences have a better way understanding of who they are, what they need to succeed, and able to communicate to their teachers, professors, and employers. Thank you.